Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Command Point. My name's Ryan. Today I'm here with Shane.
Hello, how's it going?
It's going pretty good. Today we are doing another Kill Team Deep Dive, this time talking all about the Traitor Space Marines. This faction is probably my favorite to run right now. I don't think that they're the best, but I think they're pretty good. They're definitely playable. Shane, how do
Yeah,
you feel about these guys?
yeah, I think they're pretty solid. Out of the gate, they were definitely, other than Custodes, probably the best elite team. Just having access to 6 elite guys instead of 5 is really nice to start. And the models themselves are pretty good too, and they've got really cool equipment and really good ploys. And yeah, I mean, they've kind of got everything you want from an elite team in this game, I would say. And they've got cultists, so they're not just an elite team.
Yeah, and that's the thing that really differentiates them from like your Space Marine tactical squad is the fact that you're not just limited to running, you know, 6 Marines. You can also swap it out for either your Chaos Space Marine fire team, which is 3 Chaos Space Marines, plus a Chaos Cultist fire team of 8 Chaos Cultist operatives. So they've got a lot of flexibility here. They've got a couple models here that have some really good abilities, specifically the Icon Bearer. But yeah, let's just get into it. Starting off, taking a look at the Chaos Space Marine Fire Team. This is really important for this team, is the fact that they have 4 archetypes. So they can do either Seek and Destroy, Recon, Infiltration, or Security secondaries or TAC ops. So a lot of flexibility there. Typically, you are forced to take at least 3 Chaos Space Marines. You're always going to want to go with either Security or Seek and Destroy TAC Ops for this team.
Yeah, I mean, especially if you're going 6 Marines, then I think those are the only 2 real options for you. I mean, you have infiltration in recon, but I don't think you're mobile enough for recon, and I just don't think the play styles mesh well with infiltration. So,
Yeah,
yeah, I would say seek and security are definitely the go tos, I guess.
I will say about the mobility thing, there is a tactical ploy that these guys have access to, and I'm getting ahead of myself here, but it's called Strike from Within for 1 CP. You can set up a Chaos Cultist uh, pretty much anywhere in the kill zone, but I'm not really that big a fan of it. Just kind of leaving a weak guy out there, kind of alone.
Yeah, I think
It's not really gonna do anything long term for you.
Yeah, we'll talk about it later, but I think in certain situations you can like pop them on an objective and then just like do the action right to start. But
Hmm.
that's probably the biggest use, or maybe like a flamer. I don't know. We'll talk about it.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the time, I'd say like the vast majority of matchups, you're just gonna go 6 Chaos Marines, right?
yeah, I think that's fair to say. Um,
You have these cultists, you can run them in certain like niche matchups, but they are kind of like secondary to the Marines, and like you'll never ever. Can you even take Yeah, okay, alright, it's max 1 per kill team. I was gonna say you'll never ever take 2 cultist fire teams,
yeah, no,
which
you
is
literally
technically
can't.
true, but even if you were allowed to, yeah, I don't think you would, although 16 bodies would be a lot, so
Yeah,
I don't know.
that would be a lot of bodies. So breaking down these fire teams further, the Chaos Space Marine fire team includes 3 Chaos Space Marines selected from the following list: a Chaos Space Marine Warrior, a Chaos Space Marine Gunner, which can take either a Flamer, a Meltagun, or a Plasma Gun, a Chaos Space Marine Heavy Gunner, which can take either a Heavy Bolter or a Missile Launcher, and a Chaos Space Marine Icon Bearer who can take just a bolt gun or a bolt pistol chainsword. Obviously, if you forego one of those options, you can take the Chaos Space Marine Aspiring Champion, who has some really cool weapons, namely the Plasma Pistol and the Power Fist or the Power Weapon is a typical loadout you're going to want to go with.
And, also, we kinda brushed over it, but the basic warrior gets to choose between whether he wants bolt gun and fists or bolt pistol and chainsword.
I find in most matchups you're going to want to go with the bolt gun, specifically because of a ploy that we're going to get into later on. To note here, you cannot include a Chaos Space Marine Gunner Operative and Chaos Space Marine Heavy Gunner Operative in the same fire team. So the only time you're going to be able to run a A standard gunner and the heavy gunner together would be if you're taking of course, the two Chaos Space Marine fire teams to make up your kill team.
Like we said, a lot of the time you will, but yeah, if you're just taking the one, pick the gunner, and it's probably going to be the regular gunner with the plasma. And then there's the cultist fire team, which you've got 8 chaos cultists,
Mm-hmm.
and you select from the following list. Basically, you can take a chaos cultist fighter, and they can either have an auto gun and gun butt, or an auto pistol and brutal assault weapon, or a chaos cultist flamer who gets a gun butt and a flamer or heavy stubber. And you can have up to 2 gunner operatives. And then if you're feeling wacky and crazy, you can take a cultist champion. Um,
Yeah.
but you
Um,
never will, though, unless
no.
you're just feeling flavorful and you're playing like narrative or something. But like competitively, don't ever take a cultist champion as your leader.
Taking a look at at some of the key weapons for this team, obviously we have to start out with actually before we get into the weapons, let's talk about their core stats. We're gonna look at the Chaos Space Marines here. They get 3 circle for movement, 3 APL, 3 defense, save of 3 up, and 12 wounds, which is really nice.
Yeah,
Oh,
12
the
wounds is
12
pretty
wounds is
crazy.
so nice. So that makes it 13 for the aspiring champion. Looking at the weapons, the bolt gun gets 4 attacks, hitting on 3s, damage 3, 4, and their other like weapon option really would just be the chainsword bolt pistol. 4 attacks, hitting on 3s, damage 4, 5 for the chainsword, and then damage 3, 4 for the bolt pistol, which obviously has a range of just 6 inches. They also have fist,
Yeah,
and
actually, the fists are like one of the reasons I think the bolt gun is usually better because the fist profile isn't that bad.
no, it's
Um,
not.
Usually, when you get like a fist profile, you only get 3 attacks on it, and it'll be like 2, 3 or something. But for Marines and Chaos Marines, they get 3, 4 damage. But the regular warrior, 4 attacks with the fists is actually pretty good against a lot of things. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Taking a look at the standard gunner here now, or I guess I shouldn't say standard. I should say just your special weapon gunner. He can take a flamer. There's really no reason to with these other weapon options. The Meltagun gets 4 attacks, hitting on 3s, damage 6, 3, 6-inch range, AP 2, and mortal wounds 4. It's good. It's
it's like
good.
a truck.
Yeah, it hits like a truck, but the thing is you need to you got to be close up with your enemy to really use this. And in a lot of matchups, I don't think that's the way to go. Like unless like your team is really really good in combat, it's probably smarter for most kill teams to try to avoid combat. Just because of the way that fighting works in this game.
Yeah,
So
I mean the Melta, I've always really liked it as like a counter punch. Like you
yeah.
kind of keep it like 4 to 5 inches behind like an important melee guy, and then if they charge and kill that melee guy, you have a Melta pop out and kill them.
Mhm.
But again, if you're choosing between the Melta and the Plasma, there's very similar. It's 1 less damage on the Plasma per hit and per crit, and you can still get AP2. There's not a lot of things where 6, 7 damage is like needed. Like there's not
Yeah.
a lot of 13 wound models and stuff, but yeah, I mean, maybe if you're playing against assault intercessors, then you can go Meltagun, but that's
Yeah, that makes
about the
sense.
only time.
Yeah, the plasma gun, the main thing it has over the melta gun is the fact that it has infinite range, whereas the
Yeah,
melta gun only has that 6-inch range. So I typically wind up running the plasma gun on that guy.
yeah.
And
Oh, and don't take the flamer.
yeah, if if you didn't hear what I said at the very top of this little segment here, for the dark god's sake, do not take the flamer. Yeah, let's move on. So, the Chaos Space Marine Heavy Gunner. So, his main thing is going to be the Heavy Bolter. This weapon gets 5 attacks, hitting on 3s, damage 4, 5, has the heavy keyword, and it has Fusillade, along with the P1 critical hit rule. Alternatively, you can equip this model with a missile launcher, so it's got 2 profiles for frag and crack missiles. The frag has 4 attacks, hitting on 3s, damage 3, 5, heavy blast circle, and then it has the crack profile, which is 4 attacks, hitting on 3s, damage 5, 7, heavy, and AP1.
Yeah.
So, and then he's also got his fists. The
I mean,
thing,
this is tough, right?
yeah.
Because choosing between these two. So let me hear what you gotta say about it.
So I mean, in my Chaos Space Marine kill team that I've built up, I literally do not have a missile launcher model. So I have only been taking the heavy bolter, but I love the heavy bolter, man. Um,
Mhm.
and it's key. It's basically all hinging on this particular ploy that I keep alluding to. So I think I'm just gonna talk about it now, honestly, because it's key to how this model works. So that is malicious volleys for 1 CP. It's a strategic ploy. Um, it works just like Bolter Discipline for Space Marines. If the model does not fight during this activation, it can perform 2 shoot actions during that activation if a bolt weapon is selected for each of those shooting attacks. Obviously, the heavy bolter qualifies for that, so this model gets double shoot. So you're effectively putting out 10 attacks, hitting on 3s, damage 4, 5 with Fusillade and P1. And there are some equipment pieces that you can put on this model to either make its heavy bolter even deadlier or to give it some better mobility.
Yeah, I mean, this thing is already pretty deadly. Um, I will say the one argument. Well, I mean, there's probably a few arguments to be had with the missile launcher,
Yeah,
because so the way I look at it is with heavy bolter, you can shoot twice if you use malicious volleys. But the missile launcher, like you have blast, which if you're utilizing blast, that's kind of like a shoot twice in its own right. Except you don't have to spend CP to get access to it. And of course, the crack profile is pretty strong. The downside here is that the missile launcher has 4 shots, whereas the heavy bolter has 5. And obviously, you just don't have the option to double shoot with the missile launcher unless it's like the specific instance where you're utilizing blast. So, yeah, I mean, I think a lot of the time the heavy bolter is going to be the way to go, but the missile launcher is definitely pretty interesting. And then the other thing I wanted to highlight that we didn't really talk about is that the gunner and the heavy gunner, their fists only have 3 attacks.
yeah.
So,
But I mean, like, what are you going to do with them?
yeah,
You know, you can't really give them like a melee weapon or anything, anyways. So,
a lot of people
um,
forget that though. That's just something I've noticed. They kind of assume that it's the same fist profile.
no. How can they punch somebody when they've got this giant gun in their hands?
Good
Yeah,
question.
yeah. I don't know. My plasma marine gunner, he's got like a bayonet on his plasma gun, so I think he should get 4 attacks. Um, the next model up here is the Icon Bearer, a Chaos Space Marine. So you can either do the bolt gun or bolt pistol chainsword, obviously. What differentiates him from his other dark compatriots is his abilities. So his first ability is Icon Bearer. So when determining control of an objective marker, treat this operative's APL characteristic as being 1 higher. Note that this is not a modifier, and then it says some things about narrative play here. So this guy is treated as having APL 4 when he's on an objective. So if you're ever
Hmm.
playing a mission that has like where it's just like some kind of central objective that you and your opponent are fighting over, this is a good model. Or even to
Yep.
push him over onto your opponent's objective. If you can get him over there, you can pretty easily snipe control of objectives from your opponent. He also has a unique action for Icon of Vengeance. This is for 1 AP. So until the end of the turning point, while this operative is visible to and within a square of a friendly Heretic Astartes operative, that friendly operative is inspired by vengeance. When an operative is inspired by vengeance, each time it fights in combat or makes a shooting attack in the roll attack dice step of that combat or shooting attack, if you retain any critical hits, you can select one of your failed hits to be retained as a successful normal hit.
I love that ability.
Yeah, it's so good. There's like there's poison stuff in this game that are basically that like work exactly like this, and he just gets this for free just for being him.
Yeah, and it's worth noting that I'd say other than the aspiring champ, I mean probably tied with the aspiring champ, the icon bearer is going to be the most used guy in your roster because you'll never not take him because he is the same as a regular Chaos Space Marine warrior,
Yeah, he's
but
just simply
he
better.
gets this. Yeah, and there's no limit on him. So like in the even if you're taking one fire team, like you take the leader and one of the gunners, and then there's no reason not to take this guy because you're allowed to. So you'll always have an icon bearer. Like you said, this icon, like he can benefit from it himself too. So I mean, you can if you have a bolt gun, like let's say you pop the icon and move and then shoot a guy. Suddenly, you've got this ability. You can hang him near some other bolt guns to buff them, or hang him near the gunner to make them even better. So there's a lot you can do with this icon. A lot of the time, I think that this model rewards aggressive play because of that +1 APL for contesting objectives. It might be tempting to give him a chainsword sometimes and just run him up onto those contested objectives just to ensure that you hold stuff. Or if you have something like central control, you might want him in the middle of the board.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too. With the chainsword, my icon bearer currently is modeled with a chainsword and bolt pistol, but I honestly like the bolt gun too much. And like we said earlier, that fist profile is decent enough where I think I could forego it.
I think we didn't really have this conversation, so we should probably have it now before we get into like the other stuff.
Yeah.
Um, the situations where I think you should take a chainsword is against primarily like the melee teams that have 8 or 9 wounds. I think in those situations you should take chainswords. But if they have less than 8 or 9 wounds or more, I think a lot of the time it's better to take a bolt gun um, because the fist profile usually isn't going to do it against those models. Like you'll need at least 3 hits most of the time to kill them, and that's not good.
Uh-huh.
Um, but outside of that, usually, yeah, I think the bolt gun is better, and you can get a little bit more mileage out of it. But these guys are strong in melee if you give them the chainsword. Don't get me wrong. And in those situations, which it's pretty common, like if you're up against gene stealers, maybe, or like I play a lot of like bloodletters. Like if I'm up against chainswords, like those guys can two shot my bloodletters. So that's a little bit scary. In those situations, I like chainswords, but yeah, and the reason that it's a little bit more acceptable is because usually you'll have two gunners, so you do have a sizable amount of shooting already on the list, and it's not going to like kill your shooting to take a couple of those chainswords. So I would just consider it in those situations.
So moving on here to the Chaos Space Marine Aspiring Champion. He's got a wide variety of weapons that he can take, but typically you are going to want to be taking the plasma pistol and either a power fist or a power weapon. The plasma pistol is simply the best here, even though it has that 6-inch range. The amount of damage that it can put out, he can put out like easily. I say easily, but I just roll good with this guy whenever he supercharges. Like easily put out 20 points of damage at AP2 with that plasma pistol against anything within 6 inches, obviously. The chainsword, why would you ever take that over a power fist or power weapon? I'm a big fan of the power fist here. 5 attacks, hitting on threes at 5/7 with brutal, so my opponent's not going to be able to block any of my attacks unless they crit. Really, really big fan of that. How do you feel about the power weapon?
Power weapon is usually the better choice. So now we can talk about when to take the power fist and when to take the power weapon. So I think the two times when you take a power fist is if you're against models with exactly 7 wounds and models with exactly 12 wounds. And I think against everything else, you take the power weapon. Okay, I'm sorry. No. Um, 11 to 12 wounds and exactly 7. Otherwise, you go the power weapon. Like if they have 13 wounds or more, or if they have between 7 and 11 wounds, like 8 to 10, then you go the power weapon. But everywhere else, you take the fist, just pure efficiency. The 7 wound models, you can one shot them with the power fist. Um, Between 8 and 10, you can two hit them with the power weapon pretty reliably.
Mm-hmm.
But more than 10, then you'll need 2 crits to two hit them. So you just go the power fist and you just crit hit them and kill them. Once you're out of 2 hit range, so more than 12 wounds, so neither of these weapons will two hit most of the time, then you just go the power weapon because it hits on twos and you just want reliability there.
Yeah.
So that's when you take those weapons.
We're just going to take a look at the cultists here. They're, I mean, they're weak. They're cultists. They got a 3 circle move, 2 APL, 2 for their group activation, 3 defense, 5 up save, 7 wounds apiece. That you can either equip them with a auto gun or a gun butt, pretty weak weapons, or a auto pistol and a brutal assault weapon. All of these profiles actually are the same, except for the auto pistol, which only has 6-inch range, and the gun butt, which has 3 attacks, hitting on fours, damage 2/3. Everything else I listed is 4 attacks, hitting on fours, damage 2/3.
Yeah, it's weak. I mean, these are just bodies.
Yep,
It doesn't really, you don't expect anything from these guys as far as offensive output.
yep,
But then there's the gunner, who maybe the flamer is, like we said earlier, it's not good in like a vacuum, but on these models, there's definitely some value to it. It's worth noting that the gunners are only GA1, whereas the normal cultists are GA2.
yep.
Um, so yeah, I mean, you can give the cultist gunner a flamer. I think the heavy stubber is okay. It's probably better. 5 attacks on fours, 3/4 heavy ceaseless and fusillade. Just ceaseless really is what sells it for me.
Yeah, that was my initial reaction too.
Just set him in the back. But again, the flamer, maybe with like the forward deploy play that they have, is doable. And then there's the cultist champion, which I mean, you might as well not even look at him, but we'll look at him.
I mean, I guess.
He hits on threes instead of fours.
Yeah, with the shotgun. So he's got a shotgun that hits on twos. It's damage 3/3, range 6. That's
Mhm.
really the only thing. And he's got 1 more wound.
Yeah, 8 wounds.
GA1.
Tanky guy.
Yeah, yeah, real tanky
Uh,
guy.
let's move on to the
Yeah.
plays,
All
shall we?
right. So I already talked about malicious volleys and how that works, so we can kind of skip over that unless you have anything else to add.
No, I mean it's really good.
All right.
But a lot of the time, I mean, you might not use it because of another ploy that is better. But we'll talk about hateful assault first.
Yeah.
So hateful assault is. I remember when we first started playing this game and we saw, oh, fight twice. That sounds awesome. It's really not that awesome.
No.
A lot of the time, you really don't want to fight twice. The situations where you want to take a fight twice action are when you're running a lot of melee and you're up against like a horde and you see opportunities to charge 2 guys and fight them both. That's when you fight twice. You never use fight twice. Well, you usually don't use fight twice to fight the same guy twice because that means the first fight went terribly wrong and you're not going to spend CP for situations like that.
Yep.
So fight twice is, remember, against hordes. When you have a lot of melee and you want to charge and fight 2 different guys, kill them both. So yeah, I think that about sums up hateful assault.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so let the galaxy burn. This is the last of the strategic ploys. So malicious volleys, hateful assault, those are also strategic ploys. So until the end of the turning point, each time a friendly heretic Astartes operative is activated, once during that activation, in the roll attack dice step of a combat or shooting attack, if it is targeting the closest valid target, you can retain one of your attack dice results of 5 up. That is a successful hit as a critical hit, and if you could already retain one of your results of 5 up, you can retain one of your results of 4 up instead. So what that basically translates to is one of your dice results of 5 up becomes a crit, and if you are running the power weapon on your aspiring champion, he is now going to be critting on a 4.
Yeah, 4 up lethal is really strong. This, I mean, this synergizes really well with a lot of things. For starters, your heavy bolter has P1, so making it easier to crit means you're getting that AP1 easier. So any crit rolls you have are coming through easier, like the icon, for instance, that ability where if you get a crit, you can turn a miss into a fail. Again, let the galaxy burn. You're more likely to get that crit. You're more likely to benefit from that icon. On top of the fact that crits are just good in general, you want crits. It's worth talking about. There are a couple limitations here that get forgotten about quite often that I've seen. So it's only once during an activation. So let's say you have malicious volleys and let the galaxy burn on. For your second shoot, you're not getting let the galaxy burn on the second shoot action. and it's only during your activation. So if another guy charges you and fights, you're not benefiting from let the galaxy burn on your fight dice there because it's not your activation. But all that aside, this is still a really really strong strategic play, and I think it's my favorite one here for the Traitor Marines.
I think it's becoming mine too. I was really, really into malicious volleys. But this one, it has the ability to apply to more models in your all Space Marine Traitor Space Marine kill team, if that makes sense, right? Whereas
Mhm.
malicious volleys only applies to your bolter boys.
I think in situations when you go like sometimes you're going to go into turn two with 4 CP, like you didn't spend any. I think in those situations, I think you use both. What do you
That
think?
yeah. Oh yeah, that just sounds absolutely brutal.
That's pretty strong right there. So
Yeah.
the tactical plays. Let's go with Veteran of the Long War first. 1 CP. This one's very simple. If you shoot something and you do no damage to it, you spend a CP and shoot again. Although actually, something noteworthy for Veteran of the Long War that I've never seen used is it works in combat too. So if you roll attack, I mean, it's how rare.
Very, very
How
rare.
rare are you fighting in combat and getting 0 hits?
Yeah.
That means that you missed everything because
Yeah.
if you're fighting in combat and it's your activation, you're striking first. So I guess maybe if like both you and your opponent just got 1 hit and you just want to parry them and try again, man, that's rare. But usually this is for your guns. If your
Yeah.
gun moves, you spend a CP and you roll all the dice again. And then there is Strike from Within, which we talked about earlier, right?
Yeah,
So
I kind of gave it just a brief overview, but yeah. So this happens in the tactical ploy. This is a tactical ploy that you use in the setup operative step. You select a Chaos Cultist operative, and he can be set up with a conceal order anywhere in the kill zone that is within an inch of heavy terrain and is more than 6 inches from enemy operatives and the enemy drop zone.
on missions where you have to do an action on an objective, if you can set up a cultist on an objective to start the game that is like far from your DZ that you might not be able to get normally, then I would give that a consideration. I mean, if you're going to take cultists, you might as well get the most mileage out of them. So I look for situations to utilize Strike from Within. But if it's a mission like Seize Ground or something where you're not doing an action, I wouldn't bother unless there's like a really important choke point that you can identify that you want to put like a flamer down on. But generally speaking, I would avoid Strike from Within.
The last tactical ploy they have is Warp Infused for 1 CP. Uses tactical ploy when a friendly Heretic Astartes operative is activated. Until the end of that operative's activation, you can ignore any or all modifiers to its APL characteristic, and it is not injured. So if you have a wounded guy, you got a wounded Heretic Astartes, you can just make him not wounded anymore for 1
Yeah.
CP. It's good. It's
Yeah, I
not
mean, there's going to be
bad.
times when you have an injured guy that can't do what you want to do because he's injured. Um, just use Warp Infused.
Yep. So I guess now we can go ahead and get into their equipment. Shane, do you want to start us off here with the belt feed?
Yeah, the belt feed is you give it to a bolt gun, bolt pistol, or heavy bolter. And if you do the heavy bolter, it costs 3 equipment points instead of 2. And it gets ceaseless. This is pretty good into things with invulns because the next thing we're going to talk about, I think, is usually better. Belt feed is definitely, it's good. I mean, 2 EP for ceaseless bolt guns, that's strong. You hit on 3s, so you're only missing outright on a 2. The 1, you're getting a reroll. So, yeah. And I mean, I like this too on the heavy bolter. Pretty strong.
Yeah. Next up, we have the Malefic rounds for 2 equipment points. Select one bolt gun, bolt pistol, or heavy bolter the operative is equipped with. That weapon gains the P1 critical hit rule for the battle, and if it already has the P1 critical hit rule, it gains the AP1 special rule instead.
Yeah, so this is why I said that the belt feed is better against invulns because if they don't have an invuln, I think getting P1 on your bolt guns is better most of the time. And we already talked about how let the galaxy burn gets you those crit special rolls easier. So this is just another thing that synergizes with that.
Mm-hmm.
I will say I would very much advise against giving the heavy bolter malefic rounds. It's already got P1. You already have good access to crits.
Yeah,
You're
and
probably going to end up with AP1 anyway.
yeah, you have so many shots coming out of that thing. You're probably gonna roll one crit.
especially without the Galaxy Burn.
I love this on the regular bolters though. It just levels them up a little bit for 2 EP. That's pretty good.
Yeah, it's really good.
Yeah, go
Dark
ahead.
Blessing, 3 equipment points.
So you can put it on. This is the one of the equipment pieces where you can either give it to a Chaos Cultist operative or you can give it to a Heretic Astartes.
So yeah, this is 3 equipment points. You can give it to a cultist. I wouldn't. You select a melee weapon the operative's equipped with, and you add 1 to the attack characteristics for the battle. For 3 equipment points, I don't
I
think so. Okay,
I don't like
you
this.
can. Yeah, you could take this a few different routes. You can try and make a weak guy slightly better, like with the cultist, which I think is not worth 3 equipment points. You can make a chainsword even better, make it 5 attacks, which is probably the most useful version of this, but I still don't like it. Or you can just go bonkers and give your aspiring champion 6 attacks, which is overkill.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, I think maybe you could make an argument for giving the chainsword 5 attacks, but the other 2 things, forget about it. And most of the time, there's something better anyway. Maybe if it was 2 equipment points, but yeah,
So moving on here, we have got a couple of grenades. So we've got the frag grenade for 2 EP, and you can put this on a Astartes or a Cultist. Frag grenades are great. 4 attacks, hitting on 3s, damage 2, 3, range 6, limited, blast circle, and indirect. We have talked a lot recently about why the indirect keyword is so important in this game, particularly against models like Harlequins, Orc Commandos, and Gene Stealers. And then we have here the crack grenades for 3 EP. You can also give these to a Cultist or Astartes. They've got 4 attacks, hitting on 3s, damage 4, 5, range 6, limited, AP 1, and indirect. Really good piece of kit, the crack grenade, even though it's kind of on the expensive side and it's limited. You know, you give this, either this or honestly either of these grenades to a cultist, and you have a cultist with a real weapon that is hitting on 3s.
with GA2, so you can have 2 crack grenade cultists just like rush a guy.
Oh,
That's
that's
really good.
that's mean. I like that.
Yeah. That's probably my favorite usage of cultists that I can think of.
All right, you wanna talk about the Grizzly trophy here?
Yeah, the Grizzly trophy is really nice. Basically, while you are within 3 inches and visible to an enemy operative, you subtract 1 from the attacks characteristic of ranged and melee weapons that enemy operative is equipped with. This is really good against those melee teams that have 4 attacks per guy. So, I mean, taking a model down to 3 attacks is fantastic. I've seen this used against like Harlequins with their fusion pistols, which are 3-inch range.
Nice.
So, yeah, you bring the fusion pistol down to 3 attacks, suddenly you might actually survive against it for once. But, yeah, Grizzly Trophy is you can only take 1, but it's pretty good. You can put it on, like, your champion or something, or maybe, like, a chainsword guy
I
just to
was
give them.
thinking you stick it on your icon bearer just to get all those APL shenanigans going off of one model. But then maybe that might be loading up too many eggs in one basket. So maybe
Too many auras.
put it on like the regular Marine and just kind of pair them up together and have them
Yeah.
go and take an objective off your opponent.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of the time, taking 1 attack away from your enemy is actually even better than giving yourself an extra attack. So,
Yeah,
yeah. Do you want to talk about the suspensor system?
I would love to talk about the suspensor system. So, the heavy special rule of ranged weapons the operative is equipped with is treated differently. Instead, an operative cannot move more than 3 circle in the same activation in which it performs a shoot action with any of those ranged weapons. So this is for 3 equipment points. You're only ever going to want to put this on your heavy gunner, and you're effectively doubling your movement. Instead of just being able to dash and shoot, you're going to be able to move a full 6 inches. So that's really good. Putting that extra movement on your probably your deadliest model.
Yeah, you'll probably take the suspensor system a lot. Just having that extra mobility on those big guns is pretty nice.
Yeah.
And then there's the sacrificial dagger, which, funny enough, can go on cultists. I never really realized that until now. It's 3 equipment points. Yeah, you can only have 1 on your team. This is pretty good though. Once per turning point, when this operative incapacitates an enemy operative in combat, this operative can regain up to 4 lost wounds. Your aspiring champion is a big one for this. I
Yeah.
really like him for that because he's going to be getting a lot of melee kills. And regaining 4 lost wounds is amazing. I mean, a lot of the time that can be like all the damage you took just back. Like I said, you can give it to a cultist, but if you kill an enemy operative in combat with a cultist, you should get a trophy, not 4 lost wounds.
The fact
Um,
that this happens once per turning point is kind of wild too. Hypothetically, you can have a model heal 16 wounds.
yeah, I mean, this is, I mean, the real thing is
Well,
like,
realistically, I guess it would be like 12.
yeah, I mean, unless they started off really close to you, but 12 is the amount of wounds that
Yeah,
Marine gets. So,
funnily enough, that's crazy.
um, yeah, the sacrificial dagger is pretty good. I really like this one into melee teams. Even against non-melee teams, I think you can justify it if you expect to get into combat. Yeah, I mean, I think my favorites here, they really don't have many bad choices. I think that you could say that Dark Blessing is kind of a bad choice, but other than that,
Yeah.
all these are pretty good. I mean, frag and crack grenades have their place. Grizzly Trophy's pretty good. Sacrificial Dagger is super good. Suspensor system feels like a must take. Same for
I'm
Vortex
not.
rounds.
Well, I guess it depends. If you're taking a heavy, if you're taking the heavy guy, consider the suspensor system versus the belt feed. If you're not taking the heavy guy, then obviously you don't need to worry about the suspensor system. But
Oh
we'll
yeah.
we'll we'll talk about that in a few minutes here.
And I would also say that the options here are all pretty useful. They all have their own uses, and it's very unlikely that you're going to actually rule any of these out all the time, like through a whole tournament run. Um, I think the most common one is probably going to be Malefic rounds because you're going to be taking those bullet guns like all the time, and it's really good to have that.
Hmm.
Assuming you're not up against like pure invuln save teams like Gene Stealers or something. But yeah, I think that wraps up equipment.
So let's go into kind of the more nuanced part of this kill team, and that's just like how to run it, particularly matchups, strengths, weaknesses, that sort of thing. So I'll start us off here. My preferred way, the most fun I have running this team, and I'll be honest, the only way that I've run this team is with 6 Chaos Space Marines.
Mhm.
They have so much firepower, with their poison, everything synergizing up with their weapons. I'll typically wind up taking the 2 bolter Space Marines, the gunner with the plasma gun, the Space Marine or the heavy gunner with the heavy bolter, an icon bearer, and the Space Marine or the aspiring champion with a power fist and a plasma pistol. They do a lot. This team is very, very killy. The thing is with them is you only got 6 bodies, so you really can't be everywhere at once. But if you take security as your tac ops, then you don't really need to worry about being everywhere at once when you're scoring points just by sitting in your backfield on top of objective points or your own like home field objectives, I guess I'll say, and you're just blasting your opponent off the table with things like malicious volleys and let the galaxy burn. And then typically I'll use the Chaos Space Marine aspiring champion as kind of like a counter punch, sometimes literally. So opponent gets close, charges onto one of my objectives, gets on my side of the board or whatever. Send him out. He'll shoot something with his plasma pistol, charge it, punch it to death with his power fist, or he just won't because he'll do like 20 points of damage with that plasma pistol. So that's typically how I've been running the Chaos Space Marines.
There's definitely instances where the cultists are going to come into play. What matchups do you think would be the go-to for that?
First
Like,
one just off the top of my head, it has to be Harlequins. That's where
mhm.
the cultists. You like don't have a choice. You have to take the cultists because there's so many Harlequins. They're gonna outnumber you by 2, and they are going to kill you in close combat, and there's really nothing you can do to stop that. Your melee on your Space Marines is not good enough to fight and trade with a Harlequin. The Harlequin is always going to trade up against the Space Marine, and you don't want to be like trading down. You don't you don't want to be charging a Space Marine into a Harlequin. They both trade, and now you're down a model, they're down a model, but they're still up on bodies. So
Yeah.
you got to take the Chaos Cultists. I've been talking a lot with Sensor Lock over in our Discord, and what he's been doing with the cultists is he's been kind of running them. He's been running the cultist fighters in pairs. So each one of these little like pairs, one will have an auto gun, and the other will have the auto pistol and brutal assault weapon. What he'll do is he'll have the auto gun guy just shoot a target, do some chip damage, and then the other chaos cultist with the brutal assault weapon will then charge that same model and just do some more chip damage and just tar pit the model basically. So they're not really used to actually kill things. They're more used just to get a little bit of damage in, maybe to have your Space Marines come in and clean it up. And then, like I mentioned when we were talking about equipment, you can give those cultist grenades, and now they become a real threat to specific models if you're taking a frag or a crack grenade, you know.
Yeah, I mean that's the biggest argument I think for cultists is just strapping them with grenades because now they're useful outside of just being a like a body.
Yeah,
They might actually do something. So you've got your 3 Marines, you've got 5 cultists with grenades, you've got 2 cultist gunners, and then you've got 1 useless cultist. So
yeah.
it's like there's really only one totally useless cultist still.
Yeah,
If
and
you do that.
here's the thing that I wanted to run back to about the suspensor system, because the suspensor system is 3 equipment points. If you're ever running cultist a cultist marine split kill team, I would not take the heavy gunner because I don't want to spend the points on the suspensor system or the 3 points on the belt feed. I want to save those points to get more grenades onto the field. So I would just take the regular gunner with a plasma gun, maybe the sacrificial dagger on the aspiring champion, you know, because I mean, odds are he will kill a Harlequin who charges him, if he doesn't get blown off the table by a fusion pistol, of course. So he can regain those 4 lost wounds in combat and stay on the board for a bit longer. But yeah,
So outside of Harlequins, what I mean, I think against like orcs and stuff and gene stealers, like 10 gene stealers, you could probably also justify taking those grenades, but
God, you said 10 gene stealers, and like I blacked out for a second because it's just facing that is just it just feels so overwhelming.
I do think in general that the 6 Marines are okay against Tyranids, but if you want to take cultists into that matchup, you can load them up with grenades, kind of like what we're talking about
Mm-hmm.
with the Harlequin matchup, and just see what they do. Um, Same thing for orcs, except against orcs, I think I'd rather have crack grenades. So maybe just go 3 cultists with crack grenades, and you've got a plasma guy, and then you've got your leader, and then an icon. That's maybe the way to approach it. I also don't think that the 6 Marines are like I haven't seen the matchup, but I think that the 6 Marines are okay against orcs.
I think they're okay against orcs. I mean, I literally played them against your greenskins team not too long ago, and
That's true.
I took search and destroy I think as my tac ops just to kind of experiment with it. That was a bad idea, but giving those guys like malefic rounds on the bolt guns, and in this one you're gonna want to take the suspensor system on your heavy gunner just for that extra bit of movement, and then maybe like a crack grenade to round it out. I think that would get so 2 malefic rounds, a suspensor system, and a crack grenade. That rounds out to 10 points exactly across your
Mhm.
6 guys there. Once again, you take the plasma.
Yeah.
It's just so good.
Do you
Um,
think that orcs might be a matchup for the missile launcher or the heavy bolter?
that's a good question.
Because I think that the crack profile on the missile launcher is
Yeah,
probably better against an orc.
yeah.
Um, And the blast profile isn't that bad either, and they'll have a lot of bodies, so maybe.
Yeah, because a lot of times those larger model count kill teams will do is they'll put like one or two guys behind a single piece of cover, kind of close together, just to set them up in like a staging area almost to charge onto an objective in the next turn or on their next activation or whatever. So I think that blast, yeah, that frag profile is pretty good. They have bad saves already, and you can
Mhm.
still give them the suspensor system for that extra movement. So I think the missile launcher, it at the very least, it's viable. It might be better.
Any other matchups that we want to talk about here? I mean, I think that in general, Chaos Space Marines do pretty well against other elite teams, just because at the moment they outbody them.
Yeah, that's the
Um,
big thing.
yeah,
That extra body, and they're all 12 or 13 wounds. It's like it's so good. They're just good, man.
yeah, and they're really good bolt guns. Make them pretty good against teams with a lot of chaff as well.
Yep.
Generally speaking, they've got a lot of tools to kill weaker models pretty efficiently. So that is certainly a strength for them, especially if you're going heavy on the bolt guns. But yeah, I mean, if you're assembling a 20 model roster for these guys for a tournament, you should have a cultist loadout on the roster. But I mean, I usually wouldn't bother with more than 8 cultists. Just have one set of cultists, and then the rest of your roster space just different types of enough bolt guns, enough chain swords for if you want to go all in on one or the other. Different loadouts for the Marine or the aspiring champion Marine with either a power fist or power weapon,
Yep.
and then the different gunners. So that's how I'd look at the roster for this guy.
Dude, so are you gonna go with the heavy stubber or the flamer for those two chaos cultists?
I mean, my
That's the
gut
only
says
thing that's up in the air for me.
the stubber, but some pretty good Traitor Marine players have said they like the flamer too. So I can tell you with certainty that the stubber is not outright bad. Um, I I don't know specifically how I would approach using the flamer, but the stubber is pretty straightforward. You'd sit back and shoot with him. You rarely move. I mean, it does have heavy, so it's like a back objective sitter that can look down a shooting lane, and it can actually do some stuff. It hits on fours, but it's got 5 attacks, and it's got ceaseless, which kind of offset those.
Yeah.
Um, and I think it actually puts out decent firepower.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I'm not ever putting a suspensor system
no,
on
oh
a
god, no.
chaos gunner. Even when he takes the heavy stubber, that's never gonna happen. That's just a waste. Yeah. Any other matchups? You've kind
I,
of talked about. I mean, I would talk about Pathfinders, but they're kind of just like broken at the moment.
yeah, they're
Um,
pretty good.
yeah, there's not. They're not even really good. It's like one of their stratagems is literally just like it's just broken, game breaking. Custodes or Talons of the Emperor, I should say. I don't. I don't think they're that hard of a matchup.
Yeah, the two gunners can do well into them.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, I think I would go
Would you
uh,
consider the Melta?
maybe. I think you could justify it. You could go
Yeah.
Malta, um, and the missile launcher or the heavy bolter, and then maybe a few chainsword guys with crack grenades, and then you're a leader
Yep.
who's got a power sword. Um, that can actually do pretty well on the custodies. You can kill one of them. And like that's the thing about the four custodies is once you kill one of them in the first 2 rounds, like if you can do that without having any losses yourself, you're in pretty good shape.
So that's kind of like all the top matchups, really. I would talk about Commandos, but they're kind of they're so similar to the Greenskins matchup that I had mentioned before. The only thing is they can stay in conceal and charge out of conceal into your guys. So I guess just watch out for that. What's the answer to conceal? Just take grenades. So that pretty much wraps up this heretic, or I guess this Traitor Space Marine deep dive. Thank you all for listening and for tuning in on YouTube. If you like what we're doing, make sure to hit that subscribe button. Make sure to follow us on whichever podcasting app you are listening to. If you really like what we're doing, go ahead and check out our Patreon, where you can get some of the content ahead of time, and you can also get some exclusive Patreon only content over there as well. Once again, thanks for tuning in, and we hope to see you all again in the next one.